pleased to have at the table William Gannon from Wallingford, Connecticut, who has just penned his first book called To Lose But Not Fail. What a story this is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. What prompted you to write this book?
When I first started, it was my friend Renee Morehouse. She had told me about a story. She went to a wedding and she found out that a guy had lost his wife, and she called me up the next day and just said, "Hey, we gotta get you to write a book because you have far better story than just that." And
you have had countless tragedy in your life. Let's talk about what has happened in your very young life.
One of my first memories was actually being burnt by bacon grease, and I was about 5 years old. And my sister and I were fighting for the Saturday morning cartoon couch, and I was running into the kitchen, and one of my other sisters, my oldest sister, she had spilled bacon grease on me. It wasn't her fault, but it just happened. And
third-degree burns?
Third-degree burns on my chest. Yeah, I have a skin graft in my right side of my chest, and it was just one of my earliest memories of going back to childhood.
Of pain.
Of pain.
So we fast forward, you're going to be a football player. Was that the dream?
It was my dream, yeah. That's my one goal is to become a pro quarterback and to kind of put my parents on easy street and just take care of them for the rest of my life and do what I could to help out the rest of my family. And
what happened?
It was my junior year, and it was January 20th in 1989, and my two friends who weren't, two of the best friends you ever have and two of the really good kids and had their whole lives mapped out, we just went head on with the drunk driver and just totally changed all our lives. It took the life of my friend Mark Izzo. It eventually took the life of my other friend Matt Escato, and just changed my life completely.
Physically, what happened to you?
My ball of my hip actually went through and shattered my pelvis, and I ended up developing avascular necrosis later on, which is the top of the blood system, that the vein that goes into the top of the ball of the hip actually starts to deteriorate, and I ended up getting a limp after about a year after the accident, and had a hip fusion. So,
how does one come out of an accident that took two friends? How do you deal with that?
I just I looked at it in the car that night, and I saw my best friend who was always smiling. It was the first time I never saw him smile in my whole life, and I just said, you know what? I was going to give every day, live it to the fullest for him, and he could see it through my eyes, and he could look through life through my eyes and see how I could be a positive role model after that, and that's what I want to be. And I tried to make it back to football. I did get back on the field that senior year, and they told me I wouldn't walk again first they wanted to amputate my leg. When I first got to the first hospital, I came down to Yale, and they ended up deciding that they were going to save my leg. They did save my leg, and they said, but it would be about 2 years maybe before I walk again. And I ended up with Dr. Frank Palermo from Gaylord Hospital at the time. He was trying out the new electric stim, and we were able to accomplish that goal of getting back onto the football field. I mean, my dream was far gone, but I needed to find out that by myself that I couldn't play the game anymore. After putting so much into it, I just needed to kind of realize, hey, this was it. So,
where were you going for strength? You were such a young guy. Where were you getting the strength?
Mostly from my family, and I had a great group of friends that all supported me, and regardless of whether I was going back to football or whether it was just on a daily basis, I had a lot of people that were there in your corner, and that's a positive thing. That was a good thing, that a lot of people kind of said, hey, we're regardless of where you go, we have your back, and that's a good thing.
Well, this book, To Lose But Not Fail, recounts the story. That's not the end of the tragedies. Then what happens?
Then it just really starts I start losing my grandparents. I lost my grandfather Lunny. I lost my grandmother Lunny, and then you go a little further into that. I ended up losing my daughter, and my daughter Danielle was.
She was the fourth baby.
She was the fourth baby. Yeah.
What happened?
It was just it was more doctor's negligence than anything. He decided he was going to do a C-section a little late, and my daughter had broke through my wife's uterus and drowned in blood, in the blood of the womb there. So when they pulled her out, it was just, you expect this little bundle of joy, and you just see this purple baby that lost oxygen, and I just remember getting up, and I wanted to shield my wife from seeing, you know, that image of our daughter, and it was just one of those things, and they were rushing around, and 20 minutes go by, and, you know, they finally come in and say, listen, you know, we did all we can. She's going to be brain dead for the rest of her life, and you have to make the call. So we made the call as parents, and, you know, to let her pass away and pass on. And then I just remember the anesthesiologist saying, hey, your wife's about 2 minutes away from bleeding to death herself. You got to get out of here. And then they, you know, took me away. And so you're out there, and I don't have my daughter at this point, and I don't know if I'm going to go home and tell my kids that that their mother's going to die too. And it was just a tough situation, but. My wife was a strong woman, and she pulled through, and you know, for a couple of years. And
then what happened?
Well, that's
you lose her too.
Yeah, we were at my son's baseball game, national anthem, and pulling out her chair, and she just grabbed my arm, and she said she didn't feel good, and just dropped to the ground. And a couple nurses rushed over and started, you know, trying to give her as much aid as possible as they could. And long story short, 3 days later, she ended up passing away. You know, her organs shut down, and the aneurysm actually ended up taking her life. And
at age 33.
At age 33.
So now you're a single father.
Yes.
Of 3 children. You end up writing this book. When somebody listens to your story, they can't believe the amount of tragedy that just keeps happening. You are a motivational speaker. You say you have a purpose on this planet. What is that?
I believe all these things, like, I think you could take the negative things and say, I'm going to sit back and kind of just let it beat me for the rest of my life. And I grew up athletic family, and, you know, we always fought back. And I just thought when my daughter had died, like I said, it was 48 hours of just crying. And, you know, kids say the greatest things ever, and it's just simple, and it's pure, and it's right there, and it's right in your face. And I was driving the kids up because I wanted to kind of give them some kind of a relief, because, you know, I wasn't that much fun. And I said, I'm going to take them to go play mini golf and hit in the batting cages and do all that. And we're about halfway up the Berlin Turnpike, and all of a sudden my oldest son, Billy, just said, hey, Dad, when are you going to be fun again? And at that moment, it was just that thing that just hit you, and you say, wow, you know what, I'm destroying my other kids' lives. And I just made an oath from that day on. I said, you know what, I'm not going to, regardless of how bad I'm hurting, I'll suck it up. And
So you say you're a religious guy, and you lost your folks too now, correct?
Yes.
Your mom, your dad as well?
Yeah, my dad died the same year as my daughter, Danielle. He died about 6 months later. He died December of that year. So that was tough, and it was hard because I was the only son, so to see my father, you know, and I found him and all that, it was just really rough on me for a little while, and just knowing that he wasn't there anymore, and I had to kind of take the reins and help my mom out with things. And, you know, thank God I have some great sisters that help me out as well. So,
William, how do you put one foot in front of the other every day? How are you doing this?
it's really the faith and seeing that my kids, I want to be just a great example for my kids. I want to let them know that, you know, no matter what happens, I've got their back, and, you know, they could take the example right here.
When people come to you with their problems, and I'm sure they do you kind of look at them and say, you're kidding me, right? You don't have problems. You know, when you look at all that has happened to you from a young guy in high school, are you trying to say to people, put things into perspective?
That's why I'll try to tell people, I know everybody has their crosses to bear, and something may be a little different than, like I said before, I would take the car accident 10 times over than losing my daughter, because it was just so much easier because I was more in the driver's seat. It was physical stuff that I was able to overcome a lot easier. And, you know, yeah, maybe I lost my career, but it was 10 times worse losing my daughter. And just because you see this perfect little angel and you're like, wow, this shouldn't be happening. And so that was tougher. So I put things in perspective, and I try to say, hey, you know, things could be worse, and they always could be. And like I always say with my wife too, when she had died on the, you know, pretty much, or she'd passed out on the field that day. Well, 10 minutes earlier, she was on 84 and going, you know, probably 65 miles an hour, getting to the game, and she had my other daughter and my mother in the car. So I look at it as that it was a blessing, because it could happen in a lot worse circumstances, and it could have been a lot worse. I could have been dealing with a lot more than just that. So sometimes you have to take, almost the good things out of a bad situation.
What is life to you? It has got to be so precious, and you know that in an instant it changes.
And that's, fortunately, things did happen to me at a young age, and I was able to see what really mattered in life. And I think that's important, and that's why I try to, tell the kids that when I go talk at schools or whatever, this is, hey, I was, I had all this going for me. I was the most popular in my school. I had, I was the quarterback, all that stuff, but in a heartbeat it went. And you get humbled real quick, and those are the things. So if you go out and you just try to do your best every day and try to help people, and that's the whole thing of it. If you can help somebody else, your pain kind of gets pulled away, because you can teach them, and by going out and helping somebody else, you're giving them something like a little crutch, and you try to build them up.
How much speaking do you do, and do you want to do more?
I would love to do more speaking. I think that's one of those things when you go out, like I said, you go out and you just see people's faces, or people come up to you, or they email you, or they call you later on and say, hey, that really affected, my life, and I see things differently now. And that's where you get the true, joy out of the whole thing. And that's really the purpose of the book later on, is that I want people to see, a story. But there's a lot of little examples in there of people that have picked me up when I was little.
Like what?
I was explaining a little before that when I was in the hospital, and we were going down to my first day of therapy, and
This was after the car crash.
This was after the car crash, and my therapist, Rick, he was talking to me, and he's telling me, he goes, yeah, I heard you're really good and all these things, and you could have done this and you could have done that, and really giving me a pity party. He wanted me to just, basically cry. And then as soon as we broke those doors of the hospital, he started pointing out people. And he's like, that guy's a quadriplegic. That guy over there is paraplegic. That guy has AIDS. He goes, they don't have, you don't have it half as bad as them, so now it's up to you. And it really puts that light bulb on, and that's the perspective now you're going with. It's like, hey, I'm not as bad. And you see things like that, and it does. It gets you to kind of get a new focus, and you say, hey, yeah, I don't have this, but I could have this. But it's something that you have to work for, and something that you have to be able to come out and say, hey, I can do this. And it starts with you, and being the example to people. I think that's what I want, is showing that, maybe somebody else will do something great, or somebody else will do something for somebody else as a purpose, and say, hey, I learned from Bill, but now it's kind of had that little ripple effect that it goes on to somewhere else, somewhere down the line, and that's all we can hope for.
What did this book do for you? I mean, you had to relive a lot of awful memories. Now that it's out there, it's available on Amazon, we should say. What has it done for you?
It's mostly the feedback. The feedback I've gotten so far has been so positive, and I could have never expected that, because it took me a long time to kind of put it out there, because you're out there and you're like, well, should I add this? Should I do this? Should I do this?
Sure.
Is this not too much? And is it not enough? And I wanted it to reach out to people and say, hey, you know what? This is what I got out of it. And I've gotten nothing but positive feedback. So it's been like a pleasure to hear the feedback from people. And that's the greatest thing. That's the greatest thing I'll get out of it. So.
Your kids, how are they doing?
They're doing great. Yeah, and that's the thing that keeps me going. So I have blessed with 3 great kids. And, I have Billy Jr., I have Jeremy, I have Casey, and every day is a joy. And waking up and knowing that, I get to be their dad for another day, and it's great. It's the best thing about being a parent. So.
Well, I hope somebody listening to this interview listens very closely to your words. You're a joy.
Oh, thank you.
And you've put things into perspective for so many people, and I hope great things are going to come your way. And get this book, To Lose But Not Fail. It puts things into perspective. William Gannon, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
We wish you well.
Thank you.
Made a trivial pursuit, spend one this in. Who is this girl? I spend all night kissing, and if one was right here, then who else is missing? Got a little sidetracked, I found us a witch, and I found the keys to the door, but it's also a metaphor. Things keep locked in the grocery store of a mind. Just to save time, skip right ahead to the last ride. The harder we look, the less we can see. Don't you know, you know, you know that you need me.